going to be cooking an ancient Roman recipe, which is pork stew with apples. So I have the recipe right here. I'm going to hang it over that cupboard so that if I need to look at it at any time, I can. So let me show you the ingredients that we'll be using today. Some cups lined out for me to pour spices into, and we have garlic, white vinegar, apples, olive oil, fish sauce, which we're going to use as a replacement for garum. We have black pepper, honey, ground cumin, some measuring cups. We have some coriander powder, and we have balsamic vinegar, which we're going to use as a substitute for defrutum. We also have some meats over here. We have a pound of pork and 3/4 of a pound of ground beef. We also have some mint, and last but not least, some leeks. So I'm going to start getting some of the ingredients ready. We're going to go ahead and measure out all the ingredients so that we're ready to make the sauce and then the main soup. So we're going to start out with the ingredients for the sauce. Here's 1 teaspoon of pepper that I'm putting in. Next, I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon total of cumin, coriander, and mint. So first, I'm going to take 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of coriander, and then finally 1 teaspoon of mint. Here the recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic pressed for its juice. We use just half a teaspoon since that's equal to 1 clove. This is the white vinegar, which we're supposed to use 1 tablespoon of. Just a little bit of honey. Next, some Asian cooking fish sauce, which instead of garum, we use this. Here's half a cup of defrutum, but instead of making defrutum, we just use balsamic vinegar. Here's 1 tablespoon of flour. We used chickpea flour, which is gluten-free. Hopefully it won't change the recipe, but I wanted my family to be able to eat this, and my brother and my mom can't have wheat. Okay, so now that we're finished with the sauce ingredients, we're going to start on the main course ingredients, the basic ones that aren't actually the meat. Here's 1 tablespoon of olive oil, which will help grease the pan and add a little bit more flavor. Here's a little bit more fish sauce, which we used as a substitute for garum. Now add another tablespoon of fresh coriander. So now that we're done with the basic ingredients, we're going to start cutting. So first we're going to cut 1 pound of apples. Here's a special apple cutter, which gets rid of the core of the apple, and it also makes the pieces of the apple go into little spirals, which looks pretty cool. You can skin the apple if you want. I didn't choose to for the first apple, but I did for the second 2 apples. At this point, I'm taking the apple off of the core, and I'm soon going to cut it so that it all fits together. And that's the sort of spring that I was talking about. Even though it's delicate, I think it looks kind of cool. Here's another short clip of me peeling another apple, and that time that's with the peeler so that the skin is only half on. Now I'm gonna take some of the ground beef and I'm gonna morph it into smaller meatballs around the size of golf balls, and that's gonna add to the flavor of the stew a little more. Instead of just having it be pork, it's also gonna be beef, which will give it an interesting flavor. Now I'm going to cut the length of pork into smaller cubes. The recipe calls for cube shapes just because they're easier to cook, and they do cook a little faster, it's true. Now just to be safe, we're going to cook the two meats on a pan, preheat them a little bit before we actually put them into the stew, just to make sure that they're not raw. So... now we're going to go ahead and drop the meatballs on. I went ahead and put the pork on too to make sure that it cooks before we put it into the stew. So now we're going to actually put together the stew. So the first thing we're going to do is turn on the stove under this pot. And we're going to add our tablespoon of olive oil. These are the materials that we put together at the beginning of the video. Now we're going to go ahead and add our garam, which is the Asian fish sauce which we substituted. And the pasta's not entirely even, so again, just gonna mix it around a little bit. But now what we're gonna do, now that the stew that we have so far has started boiling, we're gonna add in our meats. We don't need to cook the meat for as long since it's already pre-cooked and most of the redness is gone, but it's just the inside of the meat that's not thoroughly cooked, so we're still adding it. Just the last little bits of pork, and then we'll mix everything together. And once everything is mixed, we're gonna add the apples. So we've mixed around the ingredients a little bit so everything's cooking evenly with each other. And so we're gonna add the apples now that everything else seems ready. So we're going to put these in slowly so the pot isn't overwhelmed. Relatively slowly. That should be good. And after we mix this shortly, we're going to add all the sauces, then we're just going to let it sit and it's going to be finished. So if you remember, these are the ingredients for the sauce that we poured out at the very beginning of the video, before all the other ingredients. And so what we're going to do now, before we add them in, we're gonna mix them all into this pot. We're going to mix them around a bit, and then we're going to pour them in, and we're going to see the final product of the stew. So we added the mixture of coriander and mint, and that was the garum. Here's the flour. Here's the pepper. We have the garlic here. Here's the honey and the vinegar. While we're waiting for the honey to pour out a little more, here is a little bit more of, well, we added balsamic vinegar, but it's actually the Defrutum. So now we're going to mix everything so that it doesn't clump together inside the stew. And there we go. Mixed pretty well. Some mint leaves are still around and they'll add some more flavor. And I think we're just about ready to add it to the stew. I'm going to pour it in. I'll get my tongs from over here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put the stove on the simmer setting, turn the heat down just a little bit, and we're going to put our top on and just let that sit for 10 to 15 minutes. We'll check it periodically, but we want to make sure that's fully cooked so that it tastes good. So we've let it simmer for around 20 minutes, so we're going to turn off the stove. And I'm going to take the top off of here and just put it on top of our toaster. And now I'm going to ladle a small serving into this bowl. We'll get a little taste test from the cameraman, who's my dad over there. It's probably a good amount. There we go. So it's cooled down a little bit now, so we can actually eat all the meat and the apples, and it is really good. It's a lot better than I expected.
Yeah. I was wondering what that other flavor was that I was tasting, and it's definitely the balsamic vinegar, which is the substitute for that. What was that? Defrutum. That's really very flavorful too. And I actually can taste the honey too, like you said. I couldn't really get it before, but now I do. And the meat worked out really well. I think that pre-cooking it, I wonder how they used to do it back in ancient times, but pre-cooking it definitely saved us some time.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I didn't want to have any raw meat, and we definitely found the right solution.
Yeah. You think we'll ever make this again?
Maybe. It took a while is the only thing.
Yep. I wonder how long it would take in Roman times when they had to grind all the spices, and like, there was so much more extra work. And they didn't have a stove or anything back then.